nestled high in the jagged peaks of the Zandar Mountains, where the air shimmered with auroras even at midday and the wind sang through crystalline caves like a forgotten lullaby. There existed a village unlike any other on Earth or beyond it. Perched on floating stone platforms tethered by glowing vines, the alien settlement of Vale Na pulsed with soft bioluminescence, its domed homes crafted from moonstone and living coral. The inhabitants, known as the Zanari, were humanoid in form but ethereal in presence. Tall, slender beings with smooth purple skin that glowed faintly in the dark and long, flowing hair as white as fresh snow. They moved with quiet grace, their large silver eyes reflecting centuries of wisdom, and they lived in harmony with the mountain's ancient energy. Among them, in a small wooden cabin built from salvaged earth timber and reinforced with Zanari crystal resin, lived Harold Whitmore, a retired schoolteacher from rural Ohio who had stumbled into this world quite by accident 10 years prior. He hadn't meant to fall through a rift in the forest during a thunderstorm, nor had he expected to survive the fall into another dimension. But survive he did, and over time the Zanari welcomed him not as an intruder but as a curious guest, then a neighbor and eventually something like family. Harold was a man of routine and quiet habits. Each morning, he brewed tea using a mix of earth herbs and Zanari moss that gave it a strange, calming aftertaste, like honey kissed by starlight. He would sit on his porch, wrapped in a thick woolen coat lined with thermal alien fabric, watching the sky whales drift past like slow-moving clouds, their massive, translucent bodies pulsing with internal light. He'd wave at passing Zanari children who giggled and mimicked his earth gestures, especially the one where he scratched his balding head in confusion. Life was peaceful, if a little lonely. He missed baseball games on the radio, the smell of pancakes on Sunday mornings, and the sound of human laughter. But he had grown fond of this world, its rhythms and its people. He even learned to speak their melodic language, though he still mangled verbs and often accidentally insulted vegetables during market day. Still, they adored him. He was the gentle earthman who once tried to teach them the rules of tic-tac-toe using glowing pebbles, only to end up in a 3-day philosophical debate about whether a draw meant universal balance or existential despair. It was during one of his weekly trips to the village square that he first saw her, Lyra, a Zanari woman whose presence seemed to still the very air around her. She stood near the fountain of liquid light, her white hair cascading like frozen waterfall mist down her back, her purple skin catching the morning glow like amethyst in sunlight. She was helping her 2 young children load supplies into a hovering satchel when a sudden tremor shook the mountain, sending a cascade of crystal shards tumbling from a nearby ledge. Without thinking, Harold lunged forward, pulling the children back just as the debris crashed where they had stood. Lyra stared at him, her silver eyes wide with shock and something deeper. Gratitude, perhaps, or the first flicker of wonder. She spoke in soft, chiming tones, thanking him in halting earth language. "You save little ones, Earthman. Kind." Harold, flustered and brushing dust from his trousers, stammered, "Oh, no problem. Just reflexes." "Well, not really. More like panic, actually." She laughed. A sound like wind chimes in a spring breeze, and something inside Harold, long dormant, stirred awake. Lyra was not just any Zanari. She was once married to Koval, a proud and ambitious council elder known for his booming voice and even louder ego. Their union had been arranged, as was tradition among the higher Zanari families, meant to strengthen alliances between mountain clans. But Koval was rigid, cold, and obsessed with status. He resented Lyra's independent spirit, her love for earth stories Harold occasionally shared at community gatherings, and her refusal to conform to the strict ceremonial roles expected of her. When she began teaching her children earth nursery rhymes, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star" sung in Zanari melody, Koval erupted in fury, calling it cultural contamination. The final straw came when Lyra used a borrowed earth novel, Harold's well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, to inspire a public art mural depicting emotional equality between partners. Koval demanded divorce, and the council, swayed by his influence, granted it, leaving Lyra and her children on the outskirts of social favor, forced to rebuild their lives in quiet dignity. Harold didn't know all this at first. He only knew that Lyra kept showing up at his cabin with baskets of glowing fruit, warm bread made from skyroot flour, and shy smiles that made his heart do clumsy somersaults. At first, he thought it was just Zanari hospitality. But then he noticed how she lingered, asking questions about Earth, about love, about marriage, about why humans smiled so much when they were nervous. "On Zanara," she once said, sipping tea with careful concentration, "we feel deeply, but we do not always show it. Your people, You wear your hearts on your sleeves. Like badges. Harold chuckled. Yeah, well, we also cry during dog food commercials. So, take it with a grain of salt. She tilted her head, not understanding, and he spent the next hour explaining the emotional manipulation of 1990s advertising, complete with dramatic reenactments of a golden retriever waiting by the door. By the end, Lyra was laughing so hard she accidentally activated her bioluminescent distress glow, turning her arms a bright magenta. Harold nearly spilled his tea. Well, he said, grinning, I guess I'm a danger to intergalactic peace. Their friendship grew, slow and steady like the mountain vines that curled around stone over decades. Harold helped Lyra repair her home after a minor quake cracked the foundation, using earth techniques like mortar and bricklaying that fascinated the Zanari. In return, she taught him how to weave light thread into warm garments and how to listen to the mountain's voice. A low, harmonic hum that only the Zanari could fully interpret. He learned that the mountain was alive in a way Earth mountains weren't. Its core pulsed with ancient energy, a remnant of a dying star buried eons ago. The Zanari believed it whispered guidance, warnings, and songs. Harold, ever the skeptic, pretended to roll his eyes, but late at night, when the wind died down and the stars blazed like scattered diamonds, he'd press his ear to the stone floor and swear he heard something, like a distant lullaby or a memory he couldn't place. But not everyone welcomed their growing bond. Koval, still bitter and bruised by the divorce, saw Harold not as a kind neighbor, but as a symbol of everything he despised. Chaotic, emotional, and disruptive to Zanari order. He began spreading rumors in the council halls, claiming Harold was manipulating Lyra, using Earth mind tricks to steal her loyalty. Some elders, swayed by tradition and Koval's influence, started giving Harold cold stares in the market. Children were told not to play near his cabin. Even the village's energy grid mysteriously flickered whenever he passed the central crystal hub. Harold tried to ignore it, but the isolation stung. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the twin moons rise, Lyra appeared, her face tight with anger. They say you poison my thoughts, she said. That you make me less Zanari. Harold sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't want to cause you trouble, Lyra. Maybe I should just keep my distance. She stepped forward, her voice firm. No, you are kind. You see me. Not my status. Not my past. You see me. That is not poison. That is rare. The tension in the village simmered like a volcano beneath the surface. Then came the storm of shattered skies, a rare celestial event where solar winds from a nearby pulsar collided with Zondhar's magnetic field, causing violent energy surges across the mountain. The floating platforms trembled. Lights flickered and died. The mountain's hum turned into a painful wail. And deep beneath the village, the ancient star core began to destabilize, threatening to erupt and destroy everything. The Zanari elders gathered in panic, chanting rituals, activating old shields, but nothing worked. The core was reacting to emotional imbalance. They realized, a belief long dismissed as myth. The mountain fed on harmony. And with division spreading, fueled by Koval's resentment and the growing rift between tradition and change, the core was failing. Harold, watching from his window as panic spread, felt a surge of helplessness. He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a warrior. He was a retired teacher who once got lost in a grocery store because the cereal aisle had moved. But then he saw Lyra running through the storm, her children clinging to her, trying to reach the evacuation point. A platform cracked beneath her feet. Without hesitation, Harold grabbed a coil of Zanari climbing rope and sprinted into the chaos. Using a mix of earth knot techniques and Zanari gravity harnesses, he secured the platform just in time, pulling Lyra and the children to safety. She looked at him, breathless, rain-slick strands of white hair clinging to her face. You keep saving me, she whispered. He grinned, soaked and shivering. Guess I've got a type. But the real crisis was below. The elders admitted defeat. The only way to stabilize the core was to project pure emotional resonance. Love, unity, forgiveness into the heart chamber. But no single Zanari could generate enough. It required a bond so deep, so genuine, it could bridge species and silence centuries of pride. Harold didn't understand the science, but he understood the feeling. He looked at Lyra, at the way her eyes softened when she thought no one was looking, at the way she hummed earth songs to her children at night, at the quiet courage it took to be different in a world that valued conformity. He stepped forward. I'll go, he said. The elders protested. A human? Impossible. But Lyra placed her hand on his arm. He feels deeply, more than any of us. Let him try. Descending into the heart chamber was like stepping into the soul of the mountain. Walls pulsed with golden light, veins of energy snaking through stone like living rivers. At the center floated the star core, a swirling orb of blue fire, flickering erratically. Harold stood before it, heart pounding. He didn't know rituals. He didn't know chants. So he did the only thing he knew. He spoke, not in Zanari, not in poetry, but in simple, clumsy, heartfelt words. He talked about loneliness, about finding a home in the most unexpected place, about pancakes and starlight and the way Lyra laughed when he mispronounced moonblossom as spoontossum. He spoke of her strength, her kindness, the way she made him feel like he mattered, even when he was just an old man from Ohio who couldn't tell a plasma vine from a weed. And then, quietly, he said, I love you, Lyra, not because you're alien, but because you're you. And that's enough. The core flared, the mountain trembled, and then silence. A deep, resonant calm settled over the chamber. The light stabilized, warm and steady. Above, the storm broke. The auroras returned, brighter than ever. The village erupted in cheers, not of victory, but of awe. Harold emerged, exhausted, to find Lyra waiting. She didn't speak. She simply stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his, a Zanari gesture of profound connection, reserved for soul-deep bonds. Tears glistened in her silver eyes. Around them, the villagers watched in stunned silence. Even Koval, standing at the edge of the crowd, looked shaken. Not with anger, but with something like regret. In the days that followed, things changed. Slowly, quietly, the children returned to playing near Harold's cabin. The elders invited him to speak at the next council meeting on the subject of emotional resonance in cross-species relationships. He prepared notes, then lost them to a curious skyrat. He ended up speaking from the heart, and by the end, even the sternest elder was dabbing their eyes with a bioluminescent handkerchief. Lyra, once shunned, was now seen walking beside Harold through the village, her head held high. They weren't married, not yet. The Zanari had no concept of human weddings, and Harold wasn't sure how to ask. But one evening, as they sat on his porch watching the sky whales migrate in synchronized patterns, Lyra turned to him and said, "On Zanara, when two souls are meant, they exchange a memory, not a ring, a moment, one they both carry forever." Harold smiled. "I've got plenty to choose from. The time you turned magenta laughing, the pancake disaster with the anti-gravity syrup, the time I tried to explain sarcasm and accidentally offended the village's oldest tree." Lyra laughed. "Yes, but I choose the moment you stood before the core, when you spoke of love, not as ritual, but as truth." She reached out, her fingers glowing faintly, and touched his temple. A warmth spread through him, and suddenly he was there, in her mind, in her memory. He saw himself, standing in the chamber, voice trembling but strong, love radiating from every word, and he felt her watching from above, her heart breaking open, realizing she wasn't alone anymore. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever experienced. When it ended, he was crying. That's our memory?" She nodded. "Forever. But peace, even in the mountains, is never permanent." Weeks later, a new disturbance was detected, deep in the northern ridge, where the old star mines lay abandoned. Sensors picked up unnatural energy pulses, rhythmic, artificial. The Zanari feared an invasion. Scouts reported strange footprints, three-toed, metallic, unlike any known species. Harold, reviewing the data on a borrowed crystal tablet, froze. The pattern, it matched something from Earth. A classified military project from the 1980s, an experimental exosuit designed for high-altitude reconnaissance. A project that had vanished, along with its pilot, during a storm in the Himalayas. His blood ran cold. What if he hadn't been the only one pulled through that night? What if someone or something had followed him, or worse, had been waiting? He told Lyra. She listened, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "If others come, they will not understand this place. They will see only power, only resources." Harold nodded. "And they'll hurt people, like Koval tried to hurt us with words. But with weapons, it'd be worse." That night, they stood together on the highest ledge, looking out over the endless peaks. The wind carried the mountain's song, soft and watchful. Harold felt the weight of his past, his planet's history of conquest and fear. But he also felt something new: purpose. He wasn't just a retired teacher anymore. He was a bridge, a protector, and maybe, just maybe, a man who had finally found where he belonged. Lyra leaned against him, her white hair dancing in the wind. "Whatever comes," she said, "we face it, together." He smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "Even if it's a robot yeti with a grudge against Ohio?" She laughed, the sound echoing through the cliffs. "Especially then." And high above the world, under skies painted with alien stars, two hearts, human and Zanari, beat in quiet unison, ready for whatever came next. The days that followed were neither calm nor ordinary, but they were filled with a quiet kind of magic, the kind that grows not in grand gestures, but in shared glances over steaming mugs of moss tea, in the way Harold would absent-mindedly fix the latch on Lyra's storage pod, and how she began leaving small crystals by his door each morning, glowing faintly with recorded songs from her childhood. The mountain, once restless, now hummed a steady, contented tone, as if it too had found peace. The villagers, once divided, began to speak of Harold not as the Earthman, but as Harold of Zondar, a title whispered with growing respect. Even the children had started calling him Uncle Har, a name that made him chuckle and blush every time. But the strange energy pulses from the northern ridge did not stop. If anything, they grew stronger, more deliberate. One evening, as Harold and Lyra sat beneath the great crystal arch that arched over the village like a frozen aurora, a scout arrived breathless, her skin tinged with alarm blue. She carried a fragment of metal, twisted, scorched, but unmistakably artificial. Harold turned it over in his hands, his heart pounding. It was made of a titanium alloy composite used in late 20th century aerospace prototypes, and stamped faintly along the edge, barely visible beneath the corrosion, were the letters, USAF, Project Skyhook. His breath caught. "Skyhook," he whispered. "It was supposed to be a myth, a ghost story for pilots flying too high in storms." Lyra studied his face. "You knew of this?" He nodded slowly. "It was a secret program, experimental suit, designed to survive extreme altitudes, even brief atmospheric breaches. They said the pilot vanished during a test flight in '87. No body, no wreckage. Everyone assumed it disintegrated." He looked up at her, eyes wide. "But what if he didn't die? What if he came here, like I did?" Lyra's silver eyes narrowed. "And if he has been here all this time, what has he become?" That night, Harold couldn't sleep. He paced his cabin, flipping through old notebooks filled with sketches of Earth, memories of his life before the rift. He had been a quiet man, married once, briefly, to a woman named Clara who loved sunflowers and hated the cold. They'd divorced amicably when he couldn't give her the adventurous life she craved. "You're too grounded, Harold," she'd said. "I need someone who reaches for the stars." He'd laughed at the time. Now, irony weighed on him like a second skin. He had reached for the stars, literally, and found not only another world, but a love deeper than he'd ever imagined. And now, the shadow of Earth's past was creeping into this fragile piece. The next morning, Harold and Lyra climbed to the Watcher's Spire, a narrow tower of fused quartz where the Zanari monitored the mountain's pulse. There, they studied the latest energy readings. The pulses were no longer random. They followed a pattern Morse code. Slow, broken, but unmistakable. Harold translated it with trembling hands. HELP, NOTALIEN, MIN, TRAPPED. Lyra exhaled softly. "He is alive, and he is asking for help." Harold stared at the message, a knot in his chest. This wasn't an invasion. It was a cry from the lost, just like him. "We have to go," he said. "He's been alone for decades. In this world, it would drive anyone mad." Lyra nodded. "But we go together, and we go prepared." They assembled a small team: Lyra, Harold, 2 Zanari scouts trained in mountain survival, and surprisingly, Koval. When he stepped forward at the village council, cloaked in his elder's robes but stripped of his usual pride, the room fell silent. "I was wrong," he said, his voice low but clear. "I feared what I did not understand. But the mountain chose Harold. And Lyra. She always saw truth before the rest of us." He looked at Harold. "I cannot undo my pride, but I can help protect what matters now." Harold, stunned, could only nod. No words were needed. The journey to the northern ridge was treacherous. The path wound through ice caves that sang with trapped wind, across chasms bridged by living vines that recoiled at unfamiliar energy signatures, and past ruins of an ancient Zanari observatory, its stone tablets etched with warnings about skywalkers who forget their souls. As they climbed higher, the air thinned, and the gravity fluctuated, signs of unstable rift energy. Harold's old body ached, but Lyra stayed close, her hand often finding his, her touch sending a warm current through him, like sunlight breaking through clouds. On the third day, they found the entrance, a jagged crack in the mountainside, veiled by a curtain of frozen light. Inside, the walls were lined with frost-covered machinery, half buried in ice. And there, seated in a rusted exosuit fused to a crystalline control chair, was the pilot. He was alive but barely. The suit had kept him functioning, drawing power from the mountain's energy, but his body was frail, his skin pale and stretched too tight over bone. His eyes, when they opened, were clouded with decades of isolation. You're real," he croaked, his voice a rasp of static and memory. "Not another hallucination?" Harold knelt beside him. "My name is Harold Whitmore. I'm from Earth. I came through a storm, just like you." The man's cracked lips trembled. "Names, Vance Ridley, Skyhook pilot, 1987. A tear rolled down his cheek, freezing before it could fall. "I thought I was the only one. I thought I'd died and gone to hell." Over the next hours, Vance told his story. His suit had been caught in the same electromagnetic storm that pulled Harold through. He'd crash-landed in a remote crevasse, the suit keeping him alive but unable to move, fused to the mountain's energy grid over time. He'd watched Zanari come and go, heard their songs, seen their lights, but could not speak to them. His mind had fractured, then slowly rebuilt itself around survival and the hope, however faint, that someone would come. He'd used the suit's last functioning transmitter to send the signal, using the only code he remembered. Lyra listened intently, then placed her hand on the suit's console. Her fingers glowed, and she whispered in the old tongue. The machine responded, faintly, groaning like a tired beast. "The suit is part of him now," she said. "To remove it would kill him, but we can stabilize it, integrate it with our healing crystals, if we are careful." Harold looked at Vance. "You don't have to be alone anymore. You can come with us. Start over." Vance looked at them. This purple-skinned woman with white hair like snow, this ordinary-looking man with kind eyes, and for the first time in 35 years he smiled. "Start over," he repeated. "I'd like that." The return to Vale Na was slow and careful. Vance, still encased in the suit, was carried on a levitating sled woven from moonvine and reinforced with harmonic dampeners. The villagers gathered at the edge of the platform, curious, cautious. But when Lyra stepped forward and placed a hand on the suit, activating a soft pulse of healing light, the crowd murmured in awe. Koval approached, not with suspicion, but with a small vial of liquid starlight, the Zanari symbol of welcome. "You are no longer lost," he said. "You are found." In the weeks that followed, Vance became a quiet presence in the village. The Zanari engineers, with Harold's help, managed to adapt his suit, replacing failing components with bioluminescent circuits and linking it to the mountain's energy in a way that no longer drained him. He regained strength, learned to walk again, and even began speaking Zanari, though he insisted on calling everyone Sir out of habit. He and Harold formed a bond. Two men from the same world, separated by time and fate, now healing together. They'd sit on Harold's porch, sipping tea, talking about old Earth, about jazz, about baseball, about the taste of real coffee. "I forgot what pancakes tasted like," Vance once said, tears in his eyes. "Now I remember, and I'm grateful." But as peace settled, something deeper blossomed between Harold and Lyra. One evening, under a sky streaked with emerald auroras, she led him to the Memory Grove, a sacred circle of stone trees that resonated with emotional energy. "There is another tradition," she said softly, "one older than memory exchange. It is called Velis, the binding of souls. It is not marriage as you know it. It is a choice, to let another walk within your spirit, and you within theirs, forever." Harold's heart thundered. "Is it dangerous?" She smiled. "Only if the love is not true." They stepped into the center of the grove. The trees began to glow, their branches swaying though no wind blew. Lyra took his hands, her skin warm, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Harold Whitmore," she said, "you came from the storm, but you brought the calm. You are not of my world, but you are of my heart. Will you bind with me?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." The ritual was silent, profound. Light erupted from the stones, wrapping around them like ribbons of starlight. Harold felt himself opening, not just his mind, but his soul. He saw Lyra's childhood, her dreams of exploring the stars, her pain when Koval dismissed her, her joy when her children laughed. And she saw him, his loneliness, his quiet courage, the way he still kept a photograph of Clara in his drawer, not out of longing, but out of respect for what once was. She saw his love for her, pure, patient, unshakable. When it ended, they collapsed into each other's arms, breathing heavily, tears streaming down their faces. The grove pulsed once, then fell still. The bond was made. The village celebrated with a festival of light and song, the likes of which hadn't been seen in centuries. Vance, in his modified suit, even danced, stiffly, mechanically, but with joy radiating from every joint. Koval gave a speech not as an elder, but as a man who had learned humility. Love, he said, is not bound by species, by skin, or by sky. It is the one force even the mountain cannot control. And today we honor its power. But even as laughter filled the air, Harold noticed something strange. High above, where the auroras danced, a new ripple appeared. A faint, dark wave moving through the light, like a shadow passing over the sun. Lyra saw it too. She squeezed his hand. "The mountain hums again," she whispered. But not in harmony, in warning. Later that night, as they lay together beneath a blanket of star-woven fabric, Harold stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing. "Do you think Vance was the only one who came through?" he asked. Lyra turned to him. "You fear more are coming." He nodded. "If one rift opened, others could. And not everyone from Earth carries love in their heart." She rested her head on his chest. "Then we will face them, together, as we have faced everything." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of moon blossoms and starlight. "I never thought I'd find love at my age," he murmured. "Or on another planet." She smiled. "Perhaps love doesn't care about age, or planets. It only cares about finding its way home." And as the mountain whispered its ancient song, and the stars blinked above like watching eyes, Harold realized. He was no longer the lost Earthman. He was not just a teacher or a neighbor or a hero. He was a man who had crossed worlds, faced fears, and found a love that defied logic, distance, and time. Harold and Lyra's love grew like the mountain's vines, slow, strong, and unbreakable. In time, their home expanded, not just in size but in laughter, as life blossomed around them in ways neither had imagined. Lyra gave birth to their first child under the twin moons, a daughter with Harold's warm brown eyes and her mother's shimmering white hair. They named her Mira, light in the old tongue. She was followed by a son, Kalen, whose skin held the soft lavender hue of dawn on Zondar, and who giggled at Earth lullabies played on a cracked CD player Harold had repaired with Zanari crystal wire. More children came, 5 in total, each unique, each a blend of 2 worlds. There was little Senna, who could hum in perfect Zanari harmonic resonance before she could speak. Young Torin, who built tiny Earth-style treehouses out of floating stone. And the twins, Nomi and Ren, who invented a game combining Earth tag with anti-gravity, leaping that often ended in giggles and minor concussions. Their home, once a quiet cabin, became a bustling haven nestled between 2 glowing ridges, its walls adorned with Earth photographs and Zanari tapestries woven from starlight thread. Pancakes sizzled on weekend mornings, flavored with sky honey and served with exaggerated tales of Harold's terrible Earth sports. The children rolled their eyes but always asked for more. Vance, now fully integrated into village life, became Uncle Vunch, a beloved figure who told dramatic stories of the old world and taught the kids how to decode radio signals from passing comets. He even built a small Earth-style garden, where he grew carrots and tomatoes under artificial sunlight, though the Zanari still didn't understand why anyone would eat orange dirt roots. Koval, humbled and changed, became a mentor to the children, teaching them Zanari history and mountain wisdom. He often sat with Harold by the fire, sipping moss tea, and admitted, "I once believed purity meant staying untouched by the outside. Now I see. True strength is in blending, growing, becoming something new." The village of Vailna flourished. Earth and Zanari traditions merged, celebrating Earth's new year with floating lanterns and Zanari Unity Day with pancake feasts. Harold, once shy and unsure, stood proudly beside Lyra during festivals, holding her hand as their children danced beneath the auroras. There were no more dark ripples in the sky, no more mysterious signals. The mountain remained calm, its hum steady, as if it, too, approved of the peace that had taken root. Harold taught the children to read, using a mix of earth books and Zanari memory crystals. He showed them how to write their names in cursive and how to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, in both languages. Lyra taught them to listen to the wind, to feel the mountain's pulse, and to honor both their human and Zanari heritage. Years passed. The children grew tall and bright, each choosing their own path. One became a healer, another a star mapper. One even dreamed of visiting Earth one day. "You'll take me, Grandpa?" the youngest asked. Harold smiled. "If the mountain allows it, and your grandmother says yes." And Lyra always said yes. To adventures, to love, to life. They grew old together, Harold's hair now fully white, his steps slower, but his laughter unchanged. Lyra's glow softened with age, but her eyes still sparkled with the same wonder he'd fallen for. They sat together every evening on their porch, watching the sky whales drift by, their hands intertwined. No grand words were needed. Their silence spoke volumes. They had not just found love, they had built a legacy. Family, a bridge between stars. And high in the Zandar Mountains, where the air still sang and the light still danced, the story of the Earthman and the Starborn Woman was told for generations. A tale of courage, of kindness, of a love that needed no borders, and of a peaceful life filled with more joy than either had ever dreamed.